Hello everybody. By this video lecture, I am going to demonstrate about implementation of LDAP authentication using Spring Security. So before getting into the implementation details, let me run you all through the basics of LDAP. LDAP stands for Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. It defines a method by which the users access the directory data. It also describes how a data is represented in a directory services. The data representation in LDAP is called LDAP information model. LDAP abstracts how the data is loaded or manipulated. Here let's see about LDAP information model. As you all are aware, an information model defines how a data is represented. So here in LDAP, the data is represented in a form of hierarchical structure of object. This hierarchical structure of object forms a tree and it is called as directory information tree. Each hierarchy of object is called entry. Each entry in the tree has one parent entry and 0 or more child entries. Each entry is composed of one or more object classes. Object classes contains one or more attributes. In turn, attributes have name and it contains the data finally. The following picture shows a directory information tree which is created on a OpenLDAP server. The one on the top is called the root entry, and every entry in an LDAP is uniquely identified by a set of key value pairs called as distinguished name. In short, it is called as DN. Here, as in the picture, the root entry has a DN DC equal to V lecture, DC equal to tech, DC equal to com. This uniquely identifies the root entry. And this root entry has three childs, one on the left and the other one on the right, and one in the middle. The one on the left has CN equal to admin. Let me explain about the one on the left, CN equal to admin. It is called as bind entry, and this entry is stored in the LDAP directory information tree with a password. Using this bind entry, we will do all the operations like adding of users, adding a new roles, or associating a new user to the existing roles. All the operations are done using this bind entry, which is uniquely identified by a DN as given in this picture. The next entry, which starts with OE equal to people, is called as people entry. This entry is used to add users to an organization. By organization, I mean the root entry. The root entry represents an organization. Now let's quickly discuss about the next child entry, which starts with OE equal to role. This entry is to add the roles of the user in the organization. Okay, next let's go one level below this tree. So the bind entry doesn't have any more children's, and let's take OE equal to people entry. So this people entry has some set of childs. All these childs are the people in the organization. And let's look at this entry starting with UID equal to Siddharth. It is a sibling entry, and by adding this user ID Siddharth, we are saying that we are adding this user as part of the organization. And let's come back to the role entry starting with OE equal to roles. So here we have created a child for OE role entry, which is uniquely identified by a DN starting with CN equal to VTL underscore learner. And to this role VTL underscore learner, we are associating a member to this role. That member should be unique. So it has an attribute called unique member, and to that attribute we are adding the DN of an user. So here I am adding the DN of the user Siddharth to this role VTL underscore learners. And this role is created using a class called object class, and the object class type is group of unique names. And the unique member is the attribute of the object class that hold the unique member of the role. Okay, now let's quickly check what is OpenLDAP. So OpenLDAP is a free and open source implementation of LDAP, and I have installed this on GCP VM on my Google Cloud account, and the OS I had used for that VM is Debian 10, and I had installed this OpenLDAP by following the link mentioned here in the installation guide. So it was quite an easy steps. If you just go through it, is well self-explanatory, and you can install OpenLDAP server within 5 minutes. Okay, and let's quickly check about the features of OpenLDAP. The OpenLDAP consolidates data of an entire organization in a central repository, and this data can be accessed from anywhere, and it supports transport layer security and simple authentication and security layer for data protection. In interest of time, let's move on. Okay, now let's see how do we implement OpenLDAP authentication using a Spring Boot. So before implementing the OpenLDAP authentication, I mean before implementing a secured web application using a OpenLDAP, let me demonstrate now how do we develop a simple unsecured web application using a Spring Boot. Let's move on. So go to Spring Start page. Click on the projects of your choice. Maven. I'm using Maven, so I'm choosing Maven, and language Java, and Spring Boot version 3.0.2, and give the group name, artifact ID name, etc. I'm not giving here because I have done all these steps already. And packaging as jar, and select the Java version of your convenience. For me 17 is fine, so I have selected 17. And particularly to create an unsecured web application, we need the dependencies Spring Web and the other dependency TimeLeaf template. That's all. After these are selected, click on generate. A zip file should be downloaded. Unzip the file and import that project into Eclipse. I have done that here. That is the Spring LDAP project. So to create an unsecure web application, so as per the steps followed just now, you will get this project, and the dependencies you will get would be the one which I am going to highlight. So you will get these dependencies, and only these dependencies are required to create a unsecure web application. Once this is done, the next step is to create the templates, which will be under templates folder. So here for unsecure web application, the resources used are unsecuregreetings.html and home.html. Okay, forget about this login and secure greetings. I will come and explain later. So after creation of these templates, the next step is we'll have to make a configuration to add a view resolver for each of these templates. So we are going to make that configuration using a Java class Spring Web Config. So over here we register the view controller. So I am mapping the root URL and the home URL to the view name home, and the rest all mappings are self-explanatory. And third step, we have to make a controller. So the controller class has to be created with an annotation @controller, and we'll have to create a HTTP method mapping to a method which will handle that request. So here, for our demonstration purpose, I have created home.html as an unsecured resource, and that page will get the username as an input, and the user will submit the form. When the user submits the form, he will make a post request to /unsecure greetings. So as soon as the user makes a post request, the request comes to home controller, and this method will get the username from the request param and add that to model object. So in the model object, we create an attribute named NAME and add the name to it, and then again we are returning back the view name unsecure greetings. This enables the Spring Boot to route the request to unsecure greetings.html. This page will display the name of the user. Now let me quickly demonstrate this unsecure web application. Okay, the server has got started. Let me open a new window, localhost. It can be accessed either via the root URL, or it can be accessed via a home URL, because both these URL patterns are mapped to the view name home. So I'm typing the name and I'm going to submit the form. So the name is printed. Okay, so now let's start about the securing of web application resources using LDAP authentication. So these are the resources. The secure greetings.html is a secured resources, and I am going to secure this resources using LDAP authentication. So how do we do that? The first step is create the template, and the next step, create a security configuration using a Java class. My Java class here is web security config. So here we will have to create a security filter chain bean. So we'll have to write a method with an argument HTTP security, and that security, using that security object, we are going to authorize the HTTP request. So here we are instructing Spring Security that except this URL patterns, the URL pattern starting with //home and /unsecure greeting, except this URL pattern, secure all the rest of the URL patterns. So I'm permitting all of these resources, all of these URL patterns, and rest of any of the requests will be fully authenticated. The fully authentication process can be either via a custom login page or via the login page provided by the Spring Security. So this is the second step of security configuration, and the third step, we'll have to configure the type of authentication we are going to provide for securing the resources. Over here we are going to provide a LDAP authentication. So we'll have to write this method and get this configuration auto wired. So according to that, we are saying that we need an LDAP authentication. Okay, and read this method in this way to understand it. So when a request comes for an and resource which is going to be a protected, or when a request comes for an URL pattern which needs to be protected, Spring Security understands from here that it has to be LDAP authenticated. So for an LDAP authentication, the Spring Security need an LDAP context. So the LDAP context is an object which contains the details of LDAP URL and the port number and the bind DN to make a connection to the OpenLDAP server. So how it is done? So this LDAP authentication method creates a LDAP authentication using a LDAP context. So it creates an LDAP context using the URL, port, and the manager DN and manager password. So the one which I am highlighting. So using this highlighted one, the LDAP context is created. So if you can see that context source. So context source, after the context source, I am giving certain parameters: URL, port, manager DN, and manager password. With this, Spring Security creates an LDAP context. And after the LDAP context is created, the user is authenticated. That is, see, LDAP authentication. And LDAP authentication is performed using the user DN patterns. User DN patterns. Okay, the user DN patterns are picked up from the application.properties. Not only that, all the string parameters mentioned here all are picked up from a application.property using the @value annotation. The way of using the @value annotation is as shown in this diagram, that we should use $curly brace and refer to the property key on the application.properties. So with that, we are loading all these variables and get that accessed over here. Okay, so let me show the application.property. So the application properties such as the one highlighted on line 2 and 3 and line 9 and 10 is used to create the LDAP context. After the LDAP context is created, a bind authentication or LDAP authentication is performed using the user DN patterns, as I have highlighted in the line number 4. Here, Spring Security automatically plug in the name of the user typed on the login page to the text as highlighted, the curly brace, 0 curly brace. This is replaced by the username supplied on the login page. Okay, and a bind authentication is performed by the OpenLDAP server. And bind authentication means the LDAP server does not provide the password of the user. Rather, it verifies the password of the user and give a response to the web application. This provides us an additional layer of security, as passwords are not transferred back and forth between the web application and the OpenLDAP server. So once the bind authentication is success, so an user is bound to the context. So after the user is bound to the context, the roles of the user is searched based on the one highlighted line number 7 and 8. So it will perform the search on the group search base DN, this one. And under that, it will apply the filter, group search filter. It will search for the object class group of unique names, and under that it looks for the unique member. So even here, the unique member, the curly brace 0 and curly brace, I'm going to highlight that will be replaced by the username supplied on the login page. Okay, so let me explain quickly on a presentation with the directory information tree. So actually, if you check here, we are the group search base is this one. Sorry, is the role entry. That is the group search base, and we are searching for the user role on the sibling entry btl underscore learner OE equal to role. So on this DN, it is searched, and you can check it is of an object class type group of unique name. Under that, we are looking, we are having a unique member attribute. Okay, so to that unique member attribute, we are passing the bounded user. The whole DN is passed there, and the user roles are assigned. Okay, so now let me try accessing. Now let me demonstrate that. So I am going to demonstrate that. Okay, let me open a new URL. Let me use the same window. I'm going to access the secure greetings. So I am going to access for the user. So now he has been authenticated. Now he has been authenticated with a custom login page. So his name is Siddharth and his role is learner. How this comes, actually, when the user accesses the secure greetings.html, the Spring Security finds that that is a secured resource, and Spring Security will redirect the user to the user request or browser request to the login page. Okay, so once the user is successfully authenticated via login page, the user is then redirected back to the unsecured greetings.html. So if you check here in the LDAP REST controller, I have a post request mapping to the URL secure greetings. So it comes here, and over here I'm auto wiring a interface called user auth facade. This user auth facade has an method called get authentication, and this is implemented by a class called user auth facade IMPL, and this is marked as a add component. And here I am getting the user context and the authentication object to display the user details on the response page. And I am auto wiring this user auth facade to this REST controller. So when the request comes to this method, or when the user is redirected to secure greetings, the request comes in here first, and it will get the authentication object and will get the granted authorities. In LDAP terminology, it is the role, and in the Spring Security terminology, it is a granted authority. So the granted authority are loaded. See, the authority name on the LDAP side is role underscore VTL learner. If that such role is coming, I am making it to a readable role learner. And if it is lecturer, I am making it to role lecturer. And the user is greeted with this. So this is what happening. Now let me quickly change this to custom login page. So we have to go to web security config and comment out this and uncomment this, and then we'll have to restart. So here the only difference is we are mentioning here the login page URL pattern /login, and this is mapped to a view name login, and login.html is loaded. Over here I'm just leaving that blank, the form login. If you check here, the form login is added with an argument of login page. Over here it is left blank. So it means that Spring Security will add the customized login page. So now let's restart the service, and okay, I'll have to restart now. Now you'll be presented with the new login page. So I'm going to access the secure greetings, and I'm going to supply the same, or I'll demonstrate with a newer one. I have another user with a different role. Okay, that's all. So here actually the username is Elil and her role is lecturer. So this is how we get the authentication information of the user and display it here. So quickly let's check this flow. So this is how it happens. First, the client requests for a protected resource. The Spring Boot web app will redirect to the login page. The client is getting redirected to login page and he submit the user credential. The Spring Boot app will create a LDAP context and it will perform a bind authentication of a user and it will bound the authenticated user to the context. And then the role of that user is searched and it is all that details are added to the user details using the LDAP user details mapper. And then after all this is done, the Spring Boot web app will be redirecting the user to the protected resource after the authentication is successful. And once he is redirected, he can access the resource. If not, if his authentication fails, an error page is shown to him. Now let me quickly explain this is the LDAP server which I have installed on the OpenLDAP server which I have installed on the GCP VM, sorry, Google Cloud Platform VM. The OS used is Debian 10. So one of the command is slapcat. This slapcat command will give you the whole directory information tree of the tree in the OpenLDAP server. So let's check by adding a user. So we interact with this OpenLDAP server using a LDIF file. So let me add an user. So vi add user dot LDIF. I have that. I'll just change this username. I'll change this to Kumar. And CN can be changed. Kumar. And the password is going to be the same. So it has a DN and it has an object class and it has the common name, surname, the user password, and it has a UID number and GID number. So this DN is the uniquely identifying name of that user. Okay, now I'm going to add the user Kumar. So this is the LD file. I'm going to save this and going to run a execute addition of the user using the DN, using the bind DN which I have explained. So this is the bind DN using which I am creating this user. So I have to call that add user dot LDIF. I have to enter the bind DN password so that entry is getting added. And if you check the slapcat, you can find that. So user ID Kumar is added and the creator is this bind DN. Okay, and now let me associate this user with a role. So vi bind role dot LDIF and I will just change the member to Kumar. So it is an already existing user and to an existing role I'm adding a new user. So hence it is called, we have to mention the DN and the change type is modify and adding a unique member because I'm modifying a role with a new member. And again I'm saving this and I'm giving this command and again I'm giving the bind DN to modify the directory information tree. Okay, so now this entry is added and now let me quickly demonstrate it by entering that username. So localhost secure greetings. So let me open in incognito mode because that session is not killed. secure greetings, and login. Kumar is the login name. So see, I have added him as a lecturer and it's been reflected here. So that's the end of the demonstration. If you guys have any questions, please post it. And if you like this video, please like it. Thank you all. Bye.